Can you hear me now? That sounds very good. Well, welcome to this session on the wisdom of youth. There was a time, I must say, when I came to Davos and I thought anyone under the age of 60 was called a youth here. It was tended to be a mainly older gathering. I'm delighted to say today that we're joined by the Queen of Jordan, Queen Rania, by Gordon Brown, the Chancellor of the Exchequer from the United Kingdom, and also by our panel of genuine youth, the voice of youth, to add an extra dimension to this Davos gathering. They're going to be introducing themselves later when they do their session. Normally, of course, you've got representatives on this panel, in a journalist and a politician, two groups of people who are not normally thought of very highly by youth, according to all opinion polls. Sort of people that youth find it quite hard to engage with. I don't think any polling's been done on how the youth feel about royalty, but I'm sure they're probably held in a lot higher esteem than a lot of professions. And it certainly shows that I think young people don't feel often their voices being heard, and they feel they have an awful lot to give. I think it's axiomatic, isn't it, that the youth are the future, and that we're all working in a world because we want it to be better for our children and grandchildren. And that's why youth is important. What we're going to do this morning, we're going to hear from the Queen of Jordan and also Gordon Brown, and then the members of our youth panel are going to put forward their ideas. And then we'll have an open debate in which I hope you'll all join in. Please turn off your mobile phones if you've left them on, and we'll make sure the session runs to time. Feel free to add a little bit of humour as well, if you like. I'd like to call, first of all, on Queen Rania of Jordan. Perhaps you'd like to say a few words about how you see the importance of youth.
Well, first of all, I'd like to commend the World Economic Forum for introducing young people and bringing them into the conversation. This is the first time that we have included young people to participate. And at the risk of making us all feel very old, I think it's a really great thing. And I think it highlights the fact that youth today are an integral part of the conversation. They should be part of the dialogue. It's a recognition of the wisdom of youth. I think wisdom is an attribute that we usually only assign to older people, but we have here, because the young people have information available so readily to them nowadays, they have acquired the kind of wisdom that, I mean, you all are much smarter than I was when I was your age. So, and then there's the unconventional wisdom that they bring with their fresh outlook, their energy, their creativity. They're here not just to receive ideas and be told what to do, but to transmit their own knowledge and ideas. And this generation is the generation of content creators. This is a generation of YouTube and MySpace who are very comfortable using the net to transmit their own knowledge and to present their identities. And I think that makes us have to look at the young generation not just as persons in the making, but as active agents, as people who we have to bring into the conversation, increase their participation, recognize their voices, and make them part of the decision-making process. So I just want to say how great it is to have you all here and how much we're looking forward to hearing from what you have to say. And I think when we look at the young people nowadays, one of the major issues that they look at is achieving justice. I think young people have the idealism and the energy and the optimism, and they want to see social justice. And when we look at the challenges that they face, I think there's a vertical challenge and there's a horizontal challenge. There's a vertical challenge between generations, but I think the more important one is the horizontal challenge that exists among youth of the same age, but in different countries. So it's the geographic challenge that we face. I think young people nowadays know what's out there. They're very well informed. They know what the opportunities are. They know what they can achieve. But they also know that their chances of making it are greatly hindered by where they are born, where they live. Their geography is sometimes determined by their destiny. Their opportunities are sometimes limited because of the situation in which they live. And I think trying to bridge that geographic gap is one of the challenges that we face across the board.
Queen Rania, thank you. And I suppose what you were saying earlier, Gordon Brown, really follows on from that about the importance of engaging people in the internet age, the internet generation, in our processes.
Absolutely. This is the youngest ever platform at Davos, with the exception of me. And I, surprisingly for a politician, I'm here to listen because I think we've got a huge amount to learn. There's a great story told about Olof Palme, who was the Swedish Prime Minister at the time, going to meet Ronald Reagan in America in the 1980s. And just before Palme arrived in the White House, Ronald Reagan said to his officials, "Isn't he a communist?" And his officials said, "No, Mr. President, he's an anti-communist." And Ronald Reagan said, "I don't care what kind of communist he is." But Ronald Reagan asked Olof Palme, "So what do you believe? Do you want to abolish the rich?" And he said, "No, I want to abolish the poor. I want every young person and every adult to have the chance to realize the potential to the full." And this is, in a sense, what this session is about. Because from the Wisdom of Youth project in Greenwich last week has come out this demand, which we're going to hear explained today, that every child and every young person in the world has the chance to have education. We would be the first generation in the history of the world where every young person went to school. We would be the first generation in the world where every young person had the chance to draw on teachers and books and enable themselves to realize the potential. And if you think of the history of the world, it has been divided by all those who have had the chance to make huge progress, and for centuries, the huge waste of human potential. So this is a turning point generation, and we can actually create the situation where every child and every young person has the chance of education. And that's why I'm delighted that the demand is not just coming, as it traditionally, from commissions and business groups and from organisations interested as professionals in education. It's coming from young people themselves. And every time I've been in Africa, and I've been there quite a lot of times in the last 2 years, and you go to a school or you go to a college, it is the young people themselves, the children, who are demanding that they have education, asking why they can't stay on at school, asking why there are no school classes or school books for them. And so I believe we are part today of a discussion about one of the greatest gifts that the world can give to the younger generation, that is the chance of education for all. So that's why I'm delighted to be here, indeed privileged to be here, to listen to the wisdom of youth.
Gordon, thank you. I like the Ronald Reagan joke. I suppose he made everyone around him feel youthful. That's probably one of his great attractions. Well, let's hear from the most important element of today's session, which is the youth. They were selected from the British Council, who trawled around the world. They examined lots of people. Lots of people had to vie to come here, and in the end, this group was chosen. We're going to see a short film about how this occurred, and then after that, they're going to introduce themselves and explain why it was that they got through to here and what they want to put over. Let's see the film. We hope. Well, we can hear.
From Egypt.
I come from Slovakia.
That's Nigeria.
Northern Ireland. From Palestinian.
Maybe we're not going to hear the film. Do we think we're going to get the film? No. All right, let's crack on. Why don't you guys continue with your presentation? What I will tell you, if you'd have watched the film, you'd have seen that there was a whole process. The World Economic Forum were very keen indeed to invite young people here. They wanted them to come with ideas. In the end, lots of people took part in a meeting in Greenwich. They put forward their ideas, and in the end, this team won through. And here they are now to explain, first of all, to introduce themselves, then explain what their winning idea was that we're going to consider today.
Well, basically, as you should have seen in the screen, last week the World Economic Forum and the British Council gathered together 60 young individuals, young leaders from 49 different countries to discuss what our generation thinks are important issues and the most pressing issues of our era. Over 3 days, we talked about a lot of different issues, but we focused particularly on education and how it can and should be used to maximize the potential of the world's diverse communities. Each of us traveled a long way to get to Greenwich, but we embarked on an even longer journey once we were there. Each individual brought a unique perspective, a unique voice, and putting them together and reaching an agreement was actually quite difficult. We really gained a better knowledge of why international summits have to work really deep into the night before they reach any kind of agreement. So basically, after seemingly endless discussions, we identified two pressing challenges. The first is that the world needs to take education, collective action on education for all, but not just education for all, quality education. The second was the need for active global citizens who would strive for unity and diversity. With these issues in mind, we were challenged by Klaus Schwab to develop clear, actionable proposals to present before you at Davos. On Saturday, January 20th, the teams selected which team they believed would best represent our ideas at Davos. And all of the ideas will be in this brochure that you will be handed out later on your way out. Over a number of rounds, the groups voted for the team they felt could best represent them, and that is the Greenwich Six, which is us. Unfortunately, one of our members, Jad Khair, had to return to Israel for a family funeral. But 안녕하세요, 여러분. My name is Yusan Andrea Choi, and I'm from South Korea.
I'm Chanda Gura from Mauritius.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Yusra Taha and I'm from Egypt.
Guten Morgen, meine Damen und Herren. My name is Armin Stali. I'm from Switzerland.
G'day everyone. My name's Simon Moss and I'm from Australia.
Basically, we're here in Switzerland this week not only to challenge all of you with our ideas, but to represent the voice of the 54 other colleagues that we met at Greenwich Forum 2007, who we think of as the seventh member of our group.
I will now ask you to turn back time and ponder on your childhood days. Do you remember that teacher who has marked you by teaching you how to read, or to do long divisions, or simply how to smile? I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Many children do not have these memories. Either they are out of school or they are taught in conditions that provide them with few opportunities to really learn. Did you know that in Mali there are as many as 71 primary age children for every teacher? The figure here in Switzerland is just 12. How can you possibly expect a student to concentrate in a classroom packed with so many other students? Many teachers are under-rewarded and poorly motivated. Frequently, students come to school only to find their teachers absent. In India, 1 in 10 factory workers fail to come to work every day. For teachers, the figure is nearly 1 in 4. We know, meanwhile, that in some countries, teachers barely get any training at all. For too long, education has been spoken about as an issue of quantity, not quality. We need to reframe the debate. This means investing much more in teachers, who are the foundation of any education system. We need to ensure that there are enough of them, of course, but we also need to ensure they are equipped to face the challenges of the modern world, and that they have the knowledge and skills to pass on to their students. It is only by doing so that we can fulfill our promises to provide education for the world's children.
The second challenge on our agenda is to develop new generations of active global citizens. We live in a world where extremism, religious and political fanaticism, and terrorism are all on the rise. It would be interesting to know that in the year 2004, we witnessed 651 terrorist attacks all over the world, which is the highest since 1990. The US alone saw around 7,000 hate crime incidents last year, almost all based on religion or race. While in the UK, which is relatively a very tolerant country, there were nearly 180,000 racially motivated crimes in 2004 and 2005. As Mr. Prime Minister of Malaysia said here at Davos yesterday, all religions and cultures enjoin us to reach out to the other, to share their joy as well as their pain. But too few young people really know anything or understand anything about the other. This is a major cause of xenophobia, religious and racial hatred, and the dehumanization of those who are different from us. As Your Majesty has previously mentioned, and I quote, "Education lights up the sky with new constellations of opportunity. Yet if we were to unleash the power worldwide, we must tackle 3 critical challenges, which are to ensure access, improve quality education, and provide the right teaching of our time. Our focus on quality education includes not just delivery, but also the content of what young people learn. We want to create generations that are socially responsible, tolerant, active participants in their societies, and have awareness and respect for other people's civilizations, cultures, religions, and race.
These are huge challenges that we're talking about here, and to address them, I think we really need some concerted and coordinated action at a global level. And so we challenge the world leaders here today and those of us here in the room to establish a global fund for education. The global fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria has led to a revolution in public attention and funding on health. A similar fund for education would enable us to give that same focus, that same attention and that same clarity. A fund for education would bring together governments, businesses, foundations and the public in a powerful coalition for change. Using the model provided by the Global Fund for Health, the Global Fund for Education's mission would be to ensure quality education for all and to nurture the global citizens for tomorrow's global future. Building on the work of the Fast Track Initiative, on the work of the Global Campaign for Education, a global fund for education would have a strong commitment to quality education for all and global citizenship. And the strength of a global fund in our eyes lies in its ability to bring people together, to bring together financial resources, to bring together intellectual resources, and to bring together political resources. It enhances effectiveness, it coordinates action, and it gives the sort of clarity and direction that we've seen in Gordon Brown's work in the UK on the Commission for Africa, on the Stern Report, and on reports of when Tony Blair will hand over to him. Now, we see that we've got the same opportunity to give this focus and clarity to education. Even with the coordinating work of something like the Fast Track Initiative, we're still billions of dollars short on reaching the MDG2, universal primary education for all. Yet, how are we going to reach this even higher benchmark of quality education for all if we don't invest more money and not just look to governments for the investment of this money, but look to all places? And so I doubt anyone in this room, except perhaps the Google guys or Bill Gates, of themselves can actually address these problems single-handedly. So we're proposing that we bring together all of the key stakeholders when it comes to education and invest in real outcomes and quality education for all. I'm now going to hand over to Armin and Yosra, who'll go into a bit more detail about some of our thoughts on how we'd make this happen.
Now, first of all, we're going to talk about quality. And we believe that investing into teachers is the key factor to really promote and boosting educational standards. We believe the fund, the Global Fund for Education, should focus on three aspects: quality teacher training, decreasing absenteeism, and reducing class sizes. As Chanda has told us previously, in many countries, some teachers get hardly any training at all. We have to learn how to teach. The fund could support innovation in teaching training, could help spread best teaching practices from country to country, and set up an international network, helping teachers, helping them each other out and giving them advices in their professional development. Once we've trained teachers properly, we have to make sure we give them good jobs. Many teachers currently work in terrible conditions. Now, perhaps we should not ask ourselves why teachers are absent from schools, but rather why they show up at all. Now, this leads us to the question, how can we reduce absenteeism? One approach would be to increase local control, for example, by giving local school committees the power, new power, to hire and fire teachers. Another would be to reduce class sizes. Ladies and gentlemen, teaching 25 students is hard. Teaching 70 is a cruel and unusual punishment. We believe the fund should set a target for a maximum class size of, say, 30 students in primary schools. Otherwise, education for all lacks meaning, substandard education for many. Part of the solution is better use of technology and the intelligent deployment of teaching assistants. We will need much more innovation from us, from youth, in quality standards to truly make an increase. And in the end, I believe this is what our job is.
The fund's second area of focus will be to nurture active global citizens. This relies on introducing curricula that can be adopted by individual countries, but fulfill certain general principles. The principles include helping students develop the skills to work across cultures, by providing them with the knowledge of historical experiences of the different cultural groups. All students should also have the opportunity to study different languages, and should have also the opportunity to work on various key skills, such as problem solving, civic values, conflict resolution, rights and responsibilities of citizenship, and last but not least, pathways of active participation. This could be done through addressing different various areas of core studies, which include civilizations of the world cultures, comparative religions, and definitely human rights. The handling of this material must be done in creative and interesting ways, cultivating critical thinking and analysis. One would ask, is this actually possible? In the UK, we saw many projects that imaginatively linked together different ethnic communities and tackled intercultural tensions in and out of schools. There are much initiatives across the world that show us what can be done. But they need greater global support and better networking amongst them to share their experiences and exchange their opinions. If it is bold enough, the Global Fund for Education can save millions of people from dying, not from diseases, but from ignorance.
We want to thank you for listening to our proposal, but we also want to challenge you, the world's economic power brokers, to begin the change that you wish to see in the world, and to put your words and our hopes into action. In reality, we believe that the world's leaders should make a renewed commitment to quality education. We've seen similar efforts turn into reality before, right here at the World Economic Forum in the year 2000, as Gavi, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, was launched. We're asking for this type of global mobilization to happen once again through your efforts and initiative. The world is often so preoccupied in dealing with issues that flare up today that we often forget about our tomorrow. Nobody disagrees that the children are our future and that education is really the fabric of our society. Your Majesty, Chancellor, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we must no longer delay in combining these two truths together. The Global Fund for Education is an opportunity for the world to act on their words. We ask you, the world's leaders, to give your personal commitment in making this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very articulate exposition. Whilst our other two panellists think of their response, I think we can now finally see that film that we were going to watch just a few minutes ago. Let's see if we can see that film now about this whole experience and how these people got here. Maybe we can't. Oh, well, never mind. That's life. Maybe a better education would help.
One of the great themes of this conference is the great advances in technology.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it's not evident here today. Let's go then to our response. Queen Rania, can you imagine going out to lobby for support for a global education fund? It seems absolutely self-evident, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and I think it's very doable. I mean, achieving access for all is not an impossible goal. According to UNICEF, to educate every child, we would need about between $7 and $17 billion a year. And that might seem like a lot, but when you think of the $900 billion that are spent globally on military purchases, then kind of makes sense. A Harvard professor once said, if you thought that education is expensive, try ignorance. So is it achievable? Yes. Is it doable? Yes. And access should be the lowest common denominator. As they mentioned, we have to look for quality. And even when we talk about access, we should really think about gender parity, because investing in girls' education is the highest returning investment in terms of development. So it has knock-on effects that are so many, you can't even begin to measure them. When you put a girl through school, you can really change the course of a nation. When girls go to school, not only does it improve, it's a double dividend, not only does it improve the quality of life for women and it allows them to achieve their own rights, but it also helps with the children. They enjoy better health, better economic conditions, and all sorts of knock-on effects. So that we have to emphasize. And in terms of quality, I mean, yes, we can upgrade facilities, we can upgrade curricula, put technology into the classrooms, etc. But the one thing that brings all of that to life are the teachers. If you have quality teachers who are committed, who are inspired, who will motivate their students, then that makes all the difference. And we found in Jordan that that's one thing that we're really focusing on, and it's about bringing honor back into the profession. A couple of generations ago, a teacher in a community was looked at as the leader of that community. He'd be the person that people go to if they had any problems or any conflicts. Now, for some reason, the prestige of the profession has slowly eroded, and it's time for us to bring that back, for teachers to really take pride in the profession, because I think that's what really has an impact on students at large and the future generations.
Your Majesty, thank you. And I think we perhaps underestimate how much hunger for learning children, young people have. Just on a personal note, I was in Iraq recently, in Baghdad. I met two young children of about 7 and 10. They were in a family that hadn't been able to go to school in Baghdad for the best part of a year because of the trouble there. They weren't able to cross town to their school. Their parents were worried about all the threats of going to school. And they were trying to educate themselves at home by reading. And these children had a real hunger to learn and actually were missing school. It strikes me, Gordon Brown, education in the end is a basic right, but it's more than that, isn't it? Youth are very creative, and they have that basic hunger.
Absolutely. I think we should first congratulate Queen Rania, because she's too humble to say it, but she's led the Jordan Economic Reform Initiative that has improved the quality of education and the quantity of education in Jordan, and is now a model for the rest of the world. So I think we should be very proud of what you've achieved. Nelson Mandela once said that idealism without any plan for action is mere abstraction, and a plan for action without idealism is simply directionless. But what we've got today from our young people is actually idealism combined with a plan for action, and I think that is indeed the way forward for education. I've no hesitation in saying that what we must make our priority over this year and future years is to ensure that every child in the world has education by a plan that each country is in a position to adopt, because there is a deal made, a partnership between the richest countries of the world that say we are prepared to finance deliverable plans for education, and the developing countries that are prepared to say we will make it our business to have the education reform and the education investment that is necessary, that every child has the chance of education. Now, I think this is possible over the next few years, and I think we're also making a start. I was in Abuja in Nigeria a few months ago, and I think both the problems and the opportunities became very clear to me. I went into a classroom where we were asking, and actually Bono was there as well, we were asking the children what their ambitions were. And it was absolutely fascinating. They wanted to be scientists and engineers and teachers and doctors and nurses, very high levels of ambition. None wanted to be finance ministers. And actually Bono was quite shocked that none wanted to be pop singers at that point. But we had this great level of ambition. And then the children said, we demand better education. It is our right. We must have this education, and we cannot afford to pay for this education, so something has got to be done. And here was I in a school that was virtually falling down. In the classroom I was in, there were genuinely 150 children in that classroom, and 3 were sitting at a desk that was available and should have been used only by 1. And then in other classrooms, people were sitting on the floor. They were not sitting at desks, and they were not the desks for them to have. So we have 80 million children today who are not going to school, which is a denial of a basic right. We have children going to school, but in stages, so they're in shifts of 3 or 4 hours at a time. We have children going to school without the books and the equipment that is necessary. it is estimated we are 30 million short of teachers that we need. So it's absolutely clear that we need a plan to deliver this. When Kenya made education free and said to every child that primary education was now free, 1 million children turned up to register for school. Just imagine 1 million children appearing from nowhere who'd never been at school turning up to register for school. When Uganda made education free, numbers jumped from 2 million to 6 million. Tanzania has now got 96% of children in education, partly because of debt relief, but mainly because these governments have been determined to make education a priority. So what do? First of all the major countries of the world have got to come together in support of this idea. We have put up £8.5 billion for the next 10 years. That could itself educate 15 million children, but we need to educate 80 million children. So we need America, we need the rest of Europe, we need all the oil states, we need all the advanced industrial countries that have the money to contribute to this. Secondly, I think Davos is proving this to me again today, that we need the private sector as well as the public sector to be involved. There are companies that are doing magnificent things in different countries around the world, either training teachers or providing equipment or helping build schools or give their engineering capacity to design schools or helping manage education systems. And this will work if it's a private and public partnership. And I believe there are many companies that could be persuaded that part of their social responsibility is not only what they do for education in their own countries, but in countries where they may be involved in future years. The third thing I'm convinced of from my visits around the world is that basic education has got to be free for children. There are too many countries where user fees deter particularly girls from getting the chance of education. I was in Mozambique and I had women who were sugar factory workers who earned what is the equivalent of £5, $10 a week. And they were waving their paychecks at me and the Prime Minister. And they're saying, how can we possibly afford to pay for education for our young children if that is all the money that we actually have? And in many cases, just to pay for education takes such a high proportion of the earnings that children are not sent to school as a result of that. So the third thing, that education has got to be free. The fourth thing I say is this is now urgent. There is a Millennium Development Target. We've got to meet it and ought to meet it by 2015. We are not in line to meet it, particularly in Africa at the moment. We have not made the progress that is necessary. Now, the education of one child at the moment is only $100 a year. Think of it, it's only $2 a week. That's partly because we pay teachers so little. But the total cost of educating every child in the world at the moment, as Queen Rania said, is somewhere above $7 billion, probably around $10 billion, a very small sum of money. That is the equivalent of 4 cents a day for every person in the richest parts of the world. It is absolutely the most cost-effective and most economical investment the world could make. And I just say one final thing, that it is not simply the right of every child to have education, that is important, the moral imperative to act where people are being denied chances that all of us know are essential to a civilized life, the economic need for these countries to be able to make the economic decisions through having an educated workforce for the future, the social cohesion that comes from citizens who are taught to be citizens in our schools. There is also a strategic imperative. In one of the countries I was visiting, the school that was dilapidated and not able to offer every child education, not far away was a madrasa being run by an extreme religious, possibly Al-Qaeda related sect, offering to educate children for nothing, but educating children in the terrorist violence and methods of the Al-Qaeda group. And if we don't recognize in the advanced industrial countries that if we do not make the effort to build this partnership to provide education, and that's why it's a strategic issue, then we will pay a very heavy price because others will be prepared to do what we should have done years ago, and we certainly should do urgently now.
just picking up on that, Gordon Brown, we obviously live in a world where we have a myriad of global initiatives. There are many of them all the time. How do we make this one stand out? How do we rally support for this one as opposed to all the others that we're constantly being asked to support?
Well, I can give you an invitation. There is a pledging conference that is being organised partly at British initiative, partly the European Union, but with the agreement of other countries, that is to take place in Brussels at the end of April. The intention is to start raising that sum of money, the 10 billions a year that is necessary to pay for education. 22 African countries have already submitted plans to build capacity in their education systems. They rightly say that we can invest in education this year and next year, but if there is no continuity of funding, how can we afford to guarantee to build the buildings and to train the teachers that are necessary? So we need sustained long-term funding. So we ought to respond to the 22 African countries, other countries in the rest of the world, the fast-track initiative of the World Bank. But I believe if we could have a private-public partnership starting at this pledging conference in April, we could make almost immediate progress. These countries that have submitted their plans could start to be able to implement them, and I hope that companies also represented here will see that there is an opportunity for them to be involved in this process. So this is not talk, and it is not directionless. It can actually start now.
Gordon Brown, thank you. Okay, well, this is your opportunity to have your say. We've got about 15 or so minutes left. Perhaps I could ask you, put up your hand if you wish to comment and put your questions to our panel. Lady over there.
I just want to first of all congratulate all of you on first wonderful articulation of your plan and idea. But secondly is to say, as well as gender being access to education for women being incredibly important, another one is there are over 8 million children with a disability in the world, and if we can educate for access to all for children with disability, we can move from a model of dependency to contribution, and I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Perhaps I could ask you about, and then perhaps, Gordon, do you want to say a few words on that?
Well, that's absolutely vitally important to what we're trying to do. This is not education for children who are only able-bodied. This is education for every child, and you've got to make the provision that is necessary. One of the things that's really struck me touring parts of Africa is the number of HIV/AIDS orphans who themselves have HIV, and there are 12 million HIV/AIDS orphans, often deserted by families, having to rely on an extended family network. And so it is not just the provision of education that's going to be necessary there, it's the provision of other help that is absolutely essential. And I do believe that we've been pretty slow to wake up to this particular problem as well. Now, a lot of what we do on health, and Queen Rania has been involved in the immunisation initiative as one of the board members of Gavi. A lot of what we're doing on health can reduce the incidence of ill health and disease and indeed disability. But you're absolutely right, we've got to make provision for this in our plans, but it is possible and it can be done.
Ronnie, I mean, I notice again, travelling around the world, often, particularly in poorer countries, if you can get basic education to people that's one thing, but the difficulty is that people with extra needs in education, children with extra needs, are often the bottom of the pile, and it doesn't quite go that far yet, does it?
No, it doesn't. I mean, I think, again, going back to the geographic challenge, the gap. I mean, if we take an example of a young lady, 22 years old, in Sweden, one in Sierra Leone, for example, and compare their chances. The Swedish lady will probably live to be 83 years old. She'll probably enjoy a good college education. She'll benefit from a generous welfare system, good health care and child care. The one in Sierra Leone is probably middle-aged already because she'll probably only live to be 43. She'll probably have 6 children, bury one of them before she passes away. The per capita income in Sweden is 39,000. In Sierra Leone it's 210. So the chances there's a huge gap. And I think it's imperative for us to bridge that gap. Education is one of the greatest equalizers. Technology helps us to standardize the quality of education. And it feels inherently unfair to me where all of us enjoy internet access from our homes, offices, schools, whereas many millions of people languish in a digital desert where they don't even have the basic infrastructure to support just the most basic communication tools. So I think that gap is one that we really need to focus on. And I'd like to pick up on what the Chancellor said about the imperative for education. Yes, it's been proven to help in eradicating poverty, in achieving sustainable development, but more importantly, for our times. We talked about access and quality, but education for our times. If we look at our societies today, with the borders becoming an abstraction, our societies have become very diverse, bringing people from different religions, cultures, backgrounds, and as a result, maintaining social cohesion has become more of a challenge. And without the knowledge, people, and you have, in addition, a group of extremists who try to promote an ideology of hatred. That ideology of hatred has led to a culture of fear. And that culture of fear is exaggerated when you don't have knowledge of one another. So mutual suspicion and trust only perpetuate that culture. And that's when people choose isolation over integration. And the best way to combat that is through proper education, mutual knowledge. That's what allows people to crawl out of their shell, reach out to the people in front of them, and create that kind of harmony in society that we all need to advance.
One of the great projects would be if we could have school-to-school link-ups around the world, teacher-to-teacher link-ups and exchanges, continent-to-continent, school children able and enabled through new technology to talk to each other. Our Department of International Development is financing links from British schools into particularly Africa, but Asia as well. And I think if other countries, and maybe by company sponsorship this could be done, the growth and the amount of understanding of what different cultures are offering and the scope for better relationships in the future is all that much greater. So the education programme could also be part of school-to-school links, teacher-to-teacher exchanges, and country-to-country improved relationships.
Gentleman in the front row.
Thank you. I commend Davos and British Council to bring us to this particular subject, because I believe that education is our salvation. And also I like this idea of wisdom of the youth. Even though when somebody is between 15 and 16, he's always, or she says, I am 16. But when you are 60, you say, I am twice 30. So I am reminded by another wisdom that you shall never neglect 4 small things: small fire, small disease, small enemy, and small wisdom. I think we are here not only with a small wisdom, but it will become bigger and great, but also we are here with young wisdom. So I would like to support the idea of this conference, and since I am Grand Mufti of Bosnia, I pray to God that you succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman in the second row here, sir. Just here. Yeah.
Well, I've waited for a long time that the voice of youth. And I talk to you as a grandfather. And next to me is my grandmother, my wife. And I just want to say that when we were babies, our chances of becoming grandparents were 0, because we were born in Amsterdam, occupied Amsterdam. And people saved our lives and risked their lives because they had quality teachers. They were synthesized. So what you say about quality is so extremely important. It saves lives. We are grandparents now of 6 grandchildren, and we want them to live in this world. I think the fund is doable. Not only this fund, because you need the girls to go to schools. In order to have them to go to school, there have to be toilets. 1.5 billion people have to have toilets. And the Millennium Goal is possible. And I would like just to end. We have risen to climate change, amazingly, all of us. But this is not without hope. Climate change means that we have to be engendered, and education is one of the primary ways in which we can really stand up to the climate change. This is the inner climate change and the outer climate change. And I think that we need more even than business and governments. We need citizens to citizens. If there would be voluntary taxation, just 0.001% of every citizen, in 2015, every child will have quality education.
We'll just get a few more from the floor, and then I'll ask our panellists to comment on that. Let's go to the gentleman here in the front row.
Sohail Seth from India. I just have a question or a comment for the Chancellor to respond to. In lots of economies across the world, education has to be part of the economic renewal process. We're seeing that in several countries, child labor keeps children out of schools and in places where they shouldn't be. And the whole awareness pattern is not building up as it should. Also, there is the attendant problem of one size not fitting all because of the cultural situations that exist. You know, you very rightly spoke about the madrasa, for example. Now there are schools with only girls or only boys. There are schools which are set at a distance from someone's home. There's an infrastructure issue. I would imagine the global fund for education would have to view education as an economic additive, because when you're educated and when you're literate, you also solve other problems such as population, because you then look at birth control from a different perspective rather than just from the perspective in today's world. Your comments, please. And
purely through the economic prism, Gordon Brown?
No. If you take HIV/AIDS, all the evidence is that if girls and boys are at school being educated, then the incidence of HIV/AIDS is a lot lower. If you take maternal health, all the evidence is that for a girl to have been at school gives them a better chance of dealing with some of the problems surrounding pregnancy. So education is about economic opportunity and economic development. I've just come back from India and seen the spectacular economic development that is taking place. India has reduced the number of children out of school from 25 million to 12.5 million, and by 2010 every child will be at school. But it's also about bringing people together, social cohesion, global citizens, and it also has a huge impact on health. And I think we've got to remember that we're dealing with 6 million children dying from avoidable diseases during the course of this year, many of which simply by preventative action could be avoided, and education is going to play a very important part in doing that in the future.
I just hesitate to ask you this question as the Finance Minister, Gordon Brown. Global tax on citizens, 1,000th of 1% of income?
We have been part of the initiative, which is not entirely popular in every part of the country in which we have our budgets, whereby the airport tax, part of that is hypothecated for international development. And a number of other countries have just introduced this. I think Korea has just done so. France has just done so. So that there is a hypothecation of taxation taking place in some countries to pay for international development work, sometimes health, sometimes education. But at the end of the day, I think countries with their existing budgets are capable of persuading people that this is a priority of any civilized country's budgets to contribute to the development of the rest of the world. Indeed, I do not think globalization will work and be seen to be successful unless we can build this new partnership between rich and poor countries, and that depends on us being able to put funds for investment in health and education in developing countries.
All right, we haven't got very long left. There's a gentleman who's been waiting very patiently in the fifth row.
My name is Tafazzul Rizvi. I'm from Pakistan. In Pakistan, there are a number of projects going on with foreign support and foreign donors. But one of the main reasons of their failure is that approximately 70% of the money goes back to foreign consultants, financial and technical consultants who are pre-approved and who come with a package. So in case we decide to create a global fund for education, let's hope there is a yardstick to it, that how much money has to be spent and how much money is going to be given to consultants. Thank you very much.
Perhaps consultants would like to give their services for free to this global fund. That's, right, one more audience question, and then I think I'll ask our panellists to have their final thoughts. Gentleman here in the red jumper.
Could I just address a very quick question to the Chancellor, and firstly to say that, as a result of his own, particularly his personal commitment to this, the UK has taken a wonderful leap forward and in a very exciting project. But the question of business linking with governments is really crucially dependent on thinking through deliverability on the ground in the various parts of the world, such that the difficulties of over-promising and under-delivering that we've seen in similar initiatives are avoided. The infrastructural need is very high. And I'm sure he's thought about this a great deal, but it'd be very interesting just one or two thoughts as to how this might be done most effectively, and the role that the worshipping communities, I know there are extremes on all sides, but they are located in the places that are most inaccessible, might be drawn in together with business and together with government. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's get some final thoughts now from our panellists, and perhaps I could ask our youth wing, as it used to be known in many militant organisations, to choose a couple amongst their number to also sum up their thoughts. But let me start perhaps with you, Your Majesty, your final thoughts as someone who's very engaged in the education debate as to the practical realities of getting swift action.
I think the world has had some success in multi-stakeholder partnerships, tackling different issues. Forums like these bring people from diverse backgrounds and sectors together. And I think we can take this initiative. As I said, it's not too ambitious. It's doable. We have the right mind. We have the right resources. And I think it's just getting the form into place. And I think with people like the Chancellor, who's been spearheading education initiatives, I think this is very doable.
Chancellor, you were asked a specific question. This whole issue of implementation, which also...
I think what I'm really saying is, and it really follows from what the presentation talks about, is you need a mobilization of both resources and energies if we're going to meet this Millennium Development Target. It is not technically, scientifically, or in any other way impossible to educate 80 million more children. It is something that we could do. There is no great secret about how to build a school or how to train more teachers or how to get the facilities in place. It can all be done. We're not relying on scientific invention or some great new innovation that we haven't yet thought of. What we're missing is political will. Now, the political will can be brought together not just by governments, but by citizens, as has been said from the audience, and by other partners, including the business community and including also the faith communities. Because let's be honest about the situation in Africa. A very large amount of education, and Nelson Mandela was explaining to me his education was at a church and faith school that was provided, and these schools are still very strong in many areas of the country. So this is a wide-ranging partnership that is possible. But and of course Davos has pioneered the private-public partnership for education, and one of the outcomes is the Jordan Reform Initiative, which involves some of the private sector. And I've just met Cisco, Intel and Microsoft a few minutes ago to talk about their continuing contribution to these things, and no doubt there are many other companies represented here. But you must have a coordination of this. It will not work if it's simply patchwork. You will never persuade people that the money is being well spent unless they can see that there's an overall result as well as individual improvements. And that's why we need to bring the world together. That's why we need the pledging conference. That's why we need something, whether it's a virtual fund or a fund itself, where the money is seen clearly to be put into education. Yes, there is a problem about waste of money. People talk about ghost teachers, people's finance that never actually appear. But the one thing about education is you can actually see whether children are at school or not. You can actually count and you can find out where the money is going. It's a lot easier to do that than in some other instances. And I suppose I'm more worried about ghost governments that don't appear to provide the money when they say that they're going to do so. So I say a mobilization. I say all of you here can be involved in one way or another. It's something that can involve the NGOs, charities, faith groups, and the business community. That's why, for the first time, I think, a pledging conference on international development like this on education is bringing together the public and private sector. And I think all your pressures should be on your home governments and other organisations in your own country to make them see the wisdom of being part and contributing to moving this forward. The plans are in place from Africa and other parts of the developing world. There is a World Bank Fast Track initiative ready to do peer review of the plans to move it forward. There is initial funding already provided, but we've got to move to the next stage. And I believe if we don't start making the commitments this year, then we will be seen by the rest of the world to having failed to deliver on Millennium Development Goals that was solemnly signed up to in 2000, and yet look very distant from their achievement now. Martin Luther King said about the American Constitution in the 1960s, when he was fighting for civil rights, that it had been a promissory note, that the blacks in America had been promised that they would have power and they would have rights, but the cheque had been returned with marked upon it insufficient funds, and we must never allow this to happen to the education initiative, and I hope that everybody here can support it in the months to come.
Well, finally, let's give the floor back to the wisdom of youth, and maybe a couple of you would like to comment.
I think we're here to try to make you remember once how it was like to be our age, to be full of hopes and aspirations and dreams. And I know that education is always often talked about, and what we're here is basically what the Chancellor just said, to take that next step, to take words and change it into action, and change it into change in the world throughout. And we're hoping that all of you will jump into this boat that we've created and make it into a reality.
For me, I think the energy that we see in the room now and the commitment that people have in principle delivering on these things is powerful. But what we need to do is remember that the benchmark shouldn't just be getting kids to school. It's actually making sure that when they're there, their teachers are there, that they're in a classroom that they can actually learn in, and that their education is something that's worth calling an education.
Okay. And I give the last word to Queen Rania.
Well, I think the discussion has been dominated by the issue of education. I just want to take it back to the youth and just say how proud I am to be part of this panel and how inspired I am by you, and how it's very important for you guys to realize that you are a potentially socially and politically transformative force. And just by seeing how you're taking the initiative today, I think it's very inspiring. And one of your jobs is to keep us young, because youth is not just a number. I think it's about keeping a youthful spirit. And the more we can stay linked to you, to your needs and your aspirations and your views, the more we are able to serve you. And so I think you have an important job in keeping us young in spirit. Also, I think you have a very important role to play as a voice for moderation. I think yours can be a very persuasive and eloquent voice for tolerance, for global justice, and for the moral conscience that we all need. So I just want to say how very, very proud I am of everything that I've seen today. So thank you very much.
Let's all remember as we leave this room the stories that we've heard about the children who don't get an education. Let's all remember Gordon Brown's words. There's not much point talking about it unless we're all going to leave and actually do something about it. I'm sorry you didn't get to see the film. I'm sure it was very good. Thank you very much. Thank you to our panel. Thank you to you.